I want to talk optimistically. This is TEDxBrisbane, and I want to talk optimistically about our city. And I'm trying to reconcile some of the presentations that we've seen this morning about people racing off to Haiti and dealing with the kind of turmoil there. And here we are, one of the richest, most successful cities in the world. So if I come across a little sheepish, I'm dealing with that kind of gap. But I was born in this city and grew up in this city and went to school in this city. And I'm having my career and I'm investing myself in this city. And I love looking at this photograph. And it's amazing. I love it because it's kind of this richly romantic, impressionistic view. It's got so much optimism about what our city can be, and it's possibly potentially in conflict with your everyday experience. But and I'm hoping this clicker thing, we might just see if you can check that for me. If I could do a hand wave to the person in the back of the room, and we'll see if the clicker batteries get put in slightly differently. Is that working or not working? We're still trying? Okay, there you go. Look, I was having a chat to Malcolm Middleton, who's our a very tenacious state government architect, and Malcolm and I go back a ways. He actually gave me my first job in architecture. Thank you, Malcolm. And at the time that I was kind of entering primary school, Malcolm was graduating from university setting off on his career as an architect, and the city looked a little bit like this. And the city now looks a little bit like this, if I can have the next slide. Now that's 40 years. That's occurring within the span of a single person's career. So as a city maker, and with my city making colleagues, and we're able to spend our career, oh thank you, great, I love architects, visual people, so we're kind of lost without our visual aids. We're able to spend our careers making this thing. Because when you cast your eyes out across the city, 85% of what you're looking at wasn't there 40 years ago. And my proposition to you is that we're making a new city. And it should, by virtue of the fact, when we make a new city, this is a moment of clarity handed to me at about 2 in the morning as my friend Glenn Cunnington was inking up 11 A1 drawings in one evening. It was about 6 degrees in the studio. I'm sitting there in my jeans and woolly jumper and beanie, and he's in there in his board shorts and his T-shirt, furiously working away. I asked him, was he cold? He said, I don't have time to be cold. But in a moment of clarity that night, he turned to me and he said, Pete, you know, when we build a new city, it should, by virtue of the fact we have all of the cities in the world to learn from, be the best city in the world. And I think he's right. And what we all need to understand in this city is that we are building a brand new city. This is work from Virtual Brisbane, from the Brisbane City Council, who've invested terribly generously in a virtual model of their city, and shows the aspirations for our city and the way that it might grow further forward. I certainly hope I'm present. There we go, look at that. And it's not like, when we're building this new city, it's not like we've got nothing going for us. This is a terrific plan of Australia, a map of Australia, which was delivered by Professor Peter Skinner, which overlays 2 kind of comfort indices, kind of thermal comfort. And what it says is that when basically it overlays the numbers of days in a year so that where you feel thermally comfortable. And what this map shows us is, if you can see that little green bit in the right-hand side, that they are all the parts of Australia where I neither need to heat in the winter nor cool in the summer. And that tiny little green patch on the eastern continent is where our city occurs. And Peter will go on to show another, I think, unverified slide, which has something to do with the kind of culture of architecture. So if I'm in Melbourne, I'm wearing 3 I'm wearing 3 layers. I'm very concerned about my facade. I'm very fashion conscious. It can be 3 seasons, 4 seasons in 1 hour. When I move up to Sydney, the suit's a little bit straighter. The tie's a little bit neater. You come up to Brisbane, the tie's gone. You get up to Cairns, you're flat out getting people to wear shoes to meetings. So my proposition is, as you move up the east coast of Australia, just as we take off our clothes, so do our buildings. And it's a quality of our city that we've embraced. But I'm suggesting to you that it's not just a kind of architectural vernacular. This is very fine work by just down the road here, which you can walk along the riverfront and enjoy. But this architecture has a relationship with our aspirations for how we would like to live, how we'd like to live publicly. So our buildings, this notion of openness, as we take the clothes off our buildings, by virtue programmatically, we actually have to engage publicly. And this is a tremendously optimistic way of living that's facilitated by our climate. And this notion about this new publicness is a ground-up phenomena in this city. So we've survived the 20 years of squattocracy with Joe running this state like a police state and all the artists fleeing to Melbourne and London where they would not get thrown into jail for radical ideas. And then we had the kind of beady years of the Renaissance where we built some bridges and made this magnificent building again and a gallery for us all to enjoy. And Expo 88 happened and all that kind of stuff. And we're coming to a point where Brisbane's really beginning to kind of embrace this urbanity, this way of living in a big city, and it's happening from the ground up as much as it may be facilitated from the top down. And this is I'm very happy to say that in my sleepy little suburb of Sandgate, I have a cool Melbourne laneway bar. This is the Cardigan Bar. And you can obviously see what it was and what it is. And it's a terrific thing, and it's facilitated by new liquor licensing laws, and it means that you can take your crock pot in there and eat and drink, and because it's BYO food, not BYO alcohol, which is terrific. So this notion about, you take that idea of our subtropical fantastic thing, and if UNESCO was in the business of World Heritage listing climates, we'd be on the list, and you combine it with this new way of living publicly and overtly and celebrating the kind of our cityness, and you get a subtropical CIVITAS. And this is an image from a new master plan being invested at Maroochydore, where they've got 50 hectares of golf course right in the middle of the future CBD up there, and they get to make a city centre from scratch. So you can design it. And this is emblematic, I'm suggesting, of the aspirations that we have for the new way we would like our cities to be, this idea of the city of our dreams. Now, my urban designer friends can get together and they can have their little conversations about pocket parks, or they can have their conversations about their environmentally responsive facade systems or their incredible activation of the public realm. Meanwhile, there's some clown up in Spring Hill with a 20-storey black crayon blasting it through your suburb. There's a thing going on in our city. It's called Trans-Apex. It's not the wonderful round, circular system of moving around a city, and you can recall cities like Paris which spring to mind, but it's a series of coinciding bypasses. And this is the first completed apex of Trans-Apex. And because it's a series of coinciding bypasses, all the turns are very prescriptive at its junctures, which mean that the decisions are very prescriptive. So the engineers love solving problems. To an optimist, the glass is half full. To a pessimist, the glass is half empty. To an engineer, the glass is exactly twice as big as it needs to be. I love engineers. I work with them all the time. My dad's one. Fantastic. Give them a problem and they will solve it. They realise that all the turns in this ghastly ballet of overlapping mini freeways and byways and turn-offs and turnpikes, they realised that all the decisions were very bespoke, and that you could make the wrong decision, end up on the other side of the city having to pay $5 for the privilege. So what they did was they wanted to give us more time to make that decision. So they increased all of the distances involved to make those decisions, and bang, the Vomitron was born. Oh, you're laughing. The Vomitron is the name given to it by the very engineers who designed it. So it's not... We're partway through a $13 billion spend in road-based infrastructure that largely reaches its redundancy by 2026. $13 billion. And I'm suggesting to you that there's something kind of wrong in the balance about how we're investing in the city of our dreams. Because this is this big city thinking. It's got a legacy for us. This is back in the late 60s. This is the Wilbur Smith plan for the city of Brisbane. Not too many of you will be familiar with it, but at the late, we brought this American guy out, and the Americans are great at building big roads, and he made this plan for the city, and it kind of had ghastly implications for our city. And for those of you who will recognise where the Story Bridge is in this plan, this was serious. They were going to run the other part of the Riverside Expressway along the front of the city, belt it down through New Farm, and James Street, that's a turnpike. So, and there's a legacy about us delivering this enormous infrastructure along our rivers. There's this fantastic myth about Peter Cook, the wonderful architect, visiting our city back in the 70s, and the Premier of the day proudly showing him from the parliamentary annex the number of cranes building the Riverside Expressway. And Peter Cook was said to have looked out over all of those cranes and turned to the Premier and said, "Ah, yes, we're tearing down our freeways as well." But we weren't tearing them down, we were building them. And 40 years has passed, and we still have not reconciled with, as Matt Condon has said, this curtain that has been brought down between the city and the river. Leaving aside the kind of 3 kilometres of troll habitat that's been established along this edge of the river, there's a kind of fundamental imbalance, a kind of legacy that gets delivered by this stuff. And my point to all of the people holding on to those 20-storey black crowns is, you are city makers, you're making the city with this stuff. So let's be careful about it. And let's think about the future. Because we're a river city, right? We participate globally in the international and very competitive world of livable cities. And this is page 1. When I type in Brisbane River City into Google image search, this is what I get. And I'd suggest to you that it's not quite the reality. So many of you will recognise this plan when the red line shows the bounding box of Brisbane. That was one of the first kind of planned extremities of the settlement. Many of them are still called Boundary Street, Spring Hill, Boundary Street at West End. And the little bits around the river, the grey bit is the Riverside Expressway, which is half of the river edge that the city touches. The green bit's the gardens. And that orange bit is the bit where the city actually touches the river. Is about 30% of our city's river edge. And currently it looks a little bit like this. And right now, in this part of the city is being significantly reconsidered. So in about 10 to 15 years, 75% of this stuff is going to be renewed. This is a moment that we can catch. And it's emblematic of this idea about responding to this ground-up optimism that we have for the way we would like to live in our city, and seize that moment to make something different. This is our current kind of river edge, a legacy of the 80s, and you can look at it and decide whether or not it's really an emblematic public realm of an internationally significant river city, or we could possibly reimagine it. And in reimagining it, we could capture that moment now. And I'm suggesting to you this is a part of the work recently done for council by a very fine architectural studio in Brisbane, who's made a proposition about delivering Brisbane Circular Quay, which actually captures this moment, develops an initiative between public and private interests to deliver for our city something that a truly emblematic, responsive, optimistic, river-oriented public realm. And we can do it right now. And it will cost us about the same amount of money as an average suburban overpass. And you can pop out to Geebung and see how we're spending $250 million on an overpass to help shave a few minutes off of travel out there in lieu of some of the other initiatives that we could be doing. I'm not suggesting that stuff's not important, but let's make the city as well. And I'll talk a little bit about opportunity. I get accused of being really negative when I talk about transport infrastructure. But I want to talk really about this idea about an optimism in the way that we make our city. And there's some fantastic stuff that's been going on very recently with the city centre master planning process and a joint initiative of Brisbane City Council, URBNE, the BDA and Brisbane Marketing to go through a process of public engagement around the city centre master plan. So the city's just invested in the next generation of its vision for the way that the CBD might move further forward. And part of that initiative was to publicly engage through the Ideas Fiesta. It was a fantastic set of things. There's 27 different programs and 1.2 individual feedback hits, some of them virtual and some of them physical. And a bunch of some of the architecture and landscape architecture, urban design studios in the city were invited to be aspirational about their ideas for the city. There were 16 different ideas made public. And there they all are on the screen. And I don't think they always get up on the screen together that often, but it's a great body of work. So this program actually had an enormous amount of public engagement, an enormous amount of public participation. It's emblematic of this kind of optimism for our new city. And my challenge to you is for you to all realise that we're making a new city. That this is the chance for us to kind of make the city of our dreams. And we've got to give ourselves permission to build the city of our dreams. It's a cultural change as much as it is a political change. Because the alternative is for us to be doomed forever to board the aeroplane and suffer the long journey to visit those places made famous for the very things we've forgotten to build for ourselves. Thank you.
Fantastic.